So one of the skills I mentioned, being authentic, is another skill.
Yeah.
So authenticity is the bedrock on which I try to grow from. And it's not to say I wouldn't call myself an authentic person. I would say rather that I strive to be authentic. And I think we should all strive to be authentic.
Welcome. Good to be here today. My name is Faith Onyebujo. I'm going to be the host of this very interesting program. And I have got a special guest joining me today. Well, she is, let me give a little bio, right? She's a nursery interior designer and the founder of the Baby Cot Shop. It's a luxury boutique in Chelsea, London, that delivers beautiful baby furnitures crafted to last for generations. You know what that means? It means you can pass it down to your kids' children. Interesting, right? Okay, so she helps individuals who feel stuck and transform their thinking by exposing limiting beliefs and guiding them towards a mindset of abundance and possibility. And she has over 2 decades worth of entrepreneurship experience. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Toks Aruoture. Good to have you on the program today.
Happy to be here, Faith.
Thank
you for having me.
And we've been chit-chatting, behind the cameras, and we've been enjoying our chit-chat. So let's just continue in front of the cameras now, but a little more structured. Okay, so today we want to take a look at, building tenacity and resilience, and also a mind shift in the face of negativity and leadership skills, especially in today's business world, in fact, in society as a whole. Okay, so that is what we're going to be looking at today. But remember that you can be part of the program and ask any questions or feedback at any point in time. Okay, now, my first question this beautiful day is, how would you define, for the sake of the listeners, how would you define tenacity and resilience in the context of, business? And why are these qualities important for success?
Well, great question. Resilience, I would describe it or define it as the ability to return back to your original self after you've been stretched. Because a lot of times we go through situations that we question, that stretch us, the way that a rubber band is stretched. And while you're in that state, you often feel like this, you desire for things to go back to how they used to go back to. Yeah. But it's not always about the situation, it's often about you. Okay. And that's what resilience is when you find yourself in a situation that stretches you, and you're desiring to get back to where you once stayed, get back to who you used to be.
Oh, what about tenacity?
Tenacity is staying power. So it's the ability to remain in that space while the stretching is happening.
So does that mean, let me borrow from the rubber band example you gave.
Yeah.
So does that mean when you're pushed past your elasticity point, tenacity is regardless of that, you're staying.
You're staying. You don't pivot. You don't say, I give up, I quit. You don't define or redefine the situation as not good, not for me. It's time for me to quit because I can't handle it. So tenacity is just staying power, remaining in that space of being stretched, even though you desire to return back to normalcy.
So in your opinion, why would you say that these qualities are important?
I don't know of any entrepreneur that has not been through difficulty. I don't know of any entrepreneur that has not faced doubt about their ability, about the likelihood of business success, or even just the chances of surviving whatever trying economical situation they're in. And so we find that doubt is very common amongst entrepreneurs, but even more pressing is the need or the desire to quit.
Yeah.
So many entrepreneurs have faced the likelihood of quitting, the possibility of quitting. They've considered it, they've looked at it. I always say that entrepreneurs, when you look at one business person, even if they run one business or two businesses, they really have started multiple businesses because they've quit many times in their mind and then they've got themselves back up to start again. So in this economic climate that we're in, tenacity and resilience is building the muscle of resilience, and practicing tenacity is incredibly needed, important, because it is needed for you to continue in the game and not quit.
Okay. I think you kind of dabbled into it, but I was going to ask, what some common challenges, or obstacles that professionals face in maintaining tenacity and resilience.
Okay, another really good question. There's a number of reasons why we face these and why it shows up on our path. The nature of business in itself is it's unpredictable. Business is unpredictable. Business is very much up and down. You might be flying high one day and the very next day you have nothing. It's for risk takers. It's not for the average person. Oftentimes it's not structured. You don't have a structured. You may have a plan to success, but the reality ends up falling outside of the lines of your plans. And so that's what you find is that today's leaders or today's business people are facing right now a lot of challenges that are just common to having a business. You have also regulatory requirements and policies from government that press against business owners. Sometimes you might be, working and everything's going hunky-dory for now. And then all of a sudden, a new law comes into place. You can't import this material anymore, or you can't do this anymore. You can't export. And that's, in some cases, your entire business is gone. Then we've also got the internal factors that come into play, where people go into business, sometimes for the wrong reasons. So people find themselves in a situation that they didn't. I actually got into business by accident.
Oh, really?
I did.
We should talk about that.
Well, I got in by accident because my background was as a medical representative. I worked with a pharmaceutical company. And prior to that, my desire was to go into medical school. So I grew up just going through my father's medical books, and I just thought, I'm going to be a doctor. It was written in stone. But I was also lucky to have had parents who did not stop telling my brothers and I how intelligent we were, how smart we were, how capable we were. But I took that a bit too much I took it too literally. When I studied for A-levels after I moved to the United Kingdom, did not study because I thought I'm so smart. I didn't study. And of course I failed.
Oh, no.
I did woefully. To my utter shock and surprise, I failed.
Dear.
So I didn't get into medical school, but I went in to study pharmacology with the intention of one day switching over to medicine, and got married in my second year, became obsessed with doing up my apartment. And that was how, without meaning to, I transitioned into interiors. And left school. I dropped out of university as I was going into my final year, and began and focused on interior design instead. Then set up a business, and we decided on a whim almost to move to the United States, and we moved over there. And it was just the whole process of, we were young, and, when you're young, you're fearless. And I was like, I can start a business in interior design and I'll be very successful. And I started a business. And then my husband comes back from work one day and says, hey, why don't we move to the United States? I was like, yeah, let's go. So we sold our home, and we had 3 kids at the time.
Just like that?
Pretty much, yeah. Researched the market, researched where we were going. And as part of our move for immigration purposes, we purchased a business. And so really, I wasn't planning on having a real business. I was running the interior design company, but it was still very much in the hobby, let's try and see phase, because I was only running it less than a year when we moved. And moved to the US and found myself running this thriving business that I fell in love with, and I grew it, and it did so much better than, from when I first acquired it. And,
Wow.
just put in my interior design skills, and I became a nursery interior designer, and everything was going beautifully well. But then I lost the business. I lost everything, not just the
Lost?
business. Yeah,
What
because
happened?
the recession of 2008 came in and kicked us out. I call that the perfect storm. That's the season of my life. I call it the perfect storm because everything that could go wrong went wrong for us. We had to move back to England, and this time we came back empty-handed. And so, that whole experience caused me to get into business without really planning to be a businesswoman. But then I found that I had some strengths, and I found that I enjoyed it. And the reality is I was made for it. My personality does not permit me to be in the corporate world. I thrive much better using my own ideas and coming up with my own ways of doing things. And I gain such joy and satisfaction from that. So back to your original question, people do fall into business, go in for the wrong reasons sometimes, or maybe not necessarily for the wrong reasons. They fall into it. And then they get there, and they're not prepared for the reality of what business is about, because we're faced with pictures and scenarios and stories of successful business people, but they are not always the authentic story that tells about the loss and the struggling and the pain and the risk and the fear. And so you think that, hey, they started this business and it's doing well, I can do it and I can do better, but you don't factor in other things because you didn't even know they existed.
Speaking of storytelling, I'm just wondering if you could, I mean, you've shared your story, but I'm just wondering if you could maybe share some stories or examples of individuals or companies that have actually demonstrated tenacity and resilience, especially during challenging times, and what we can learn from them.
Absolutely. So a great example is COVID. During COVID time, there was, and I'll start with my example. So my business is, as you mentioned, is a baby furniture boutique and interior design for little ones in London. And during COVID, we had the lockdown period where businesses had to shut legally, like we were not allowed to open. We weren't, and this is for physical bricks and mortar stores. We were not allowed to physically go into the shop and open. We had projects that were running at the time. We obviously receive our shipments. Much of our furniture is made either in the EU or in the United Kingdom.
Okay.
And we had shipments that we were either expecting. It was a complete disruption of our services. And pivoting from being a physical location, which we all already did have a website, but the website was e-commerce only. It wasn't really set up to handle this unexpected situation we found ourselves in. So we had to move our shipment into, like, all of our packagings had to come into my house, my hallway, my shed, and my kitchen were packed with boxes. And
just the boxes took over.
We were living a very different life. Also introduced an online consultation for interior design for nursery spaces, where previously people will physically come to the shop or we will go to their home to measure. We had to learn to do these things virtually. Exactly. And for me personally, I am a very visual person. I love people. I derive energy from people, and that was a challenge for me to be able to do. One of the projects that we had was a major refurbishment of a nursery room and like a little playroom area, and it was quite major, required building works to be done, required specialist tradesmen to come in, and a lot of coordination of various people to come on site. But then people were scared, the men were scared because COVID was new. The householders initiated this, or introduced temperature taking when we come on site, and it was taking our temperatures and hand sanitizers, and then there was social distancing in place as well. But then I remember one particular who was one of the tradesmen who was doing a highly specialized wall application that only very few people can do. He was very petrified about it, and he was like, I don't want to do it. I can't come.
Oh, wow.
And we could not continue without him. So we were like, okay, but then your temperature will be taken. And he goes, yeah, but if they take my temperature, they're going to have to come near me to take it. And then I was like, okay, but then they're going to use the gun type, there'll be a distance. No, but they have to be 1 whole meter away from me. They're not going to be 1 meter away.
Oh, wow.
And it was just very, very problematic. And we had a client who because I deal with my client base is very affluent people, high net worth or ultra high net worth individuals. Mm-hmm. And they this particular man, I remember, seemed like he was living in a world of his own. And in his world, there was no COVID. There was no problems in the world. And I was like, I don't care. I want this done.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, and
those kind of clients.
Yeah. So bless him. That was the situation. And a lot of his furniture was coming in from Italy, which is where then that was another situation, because Italy was very badly hit by COVID. Like they were, it was a dire situation. Factories were closed. And that particular furniture is handcrafted. It's all made by hand, and people have to
touched it.
Yes, and all of that, and just even them, people were falling sick in the factories. They couldn't come to work, and then we had a situation where the shipment was finally ready, and it was meant to come to, and Brexit happened, literally at the peak of COVID. Brexit happened. We changed free movements and free trade between Britain and the European Union. So now customs came into play between Paris and the UK. So now trucks couldn't come into Britain without going through customs. And then France closed their borders, which meant that even if drivers could come into the UK, they were not allowed to go back out. So we couldn't receive deliveries from trucks because people were like, I don't want to come here and get stuck. It was an absolute nightmare. And there were many businesses that did that. And some businesses completely pivoted. There was another example is one that trade was really poor for them. This was not even during COVID. This was before. And it was things were just very slow because their industry had changed completely. And they were a kitchen company. They made kitchens, and the things had gotten slowed down because new ways, like German kitchens are the thing now, and they just could not compete. And a nursery school, a private nursery school, opened a couple of doors from them. And instantly they switched and became a children's store. So they're like, okay, that's it. We have the lease. We have the space. We're going to change and do this. And these examples are of small businesses, but there are also large businesses that have had to change and pivot one way or the other, either by moving production from one location, one country to another. Scaling down their offerings is another very a sensible way of handling challenging seasons, where maybe if you're running an e-commerce store or even a physical location and you're offering, 100 different designs of a particular item, scaling it down to the top 5 that sells and getting rid of the others, that's another way in which a company could deal with challenging seasons.
All right, interesting. So I know that in all of this, we're talking about tenacity, resilience. The mind has a role to play, very, very important role to play. And we can't be talking to someone to be tenacious or resilient if they don't even believe in themselves or believe in their potentials. And being a leader, you not only have to, deal with yourself, you have to deal with other people. So let me ask, how can a leader help to promote a growth mentality or growth mindset and encourage a positive mindset shift in the place of work?
That's another great. Your questions are good, Faith.
Thank you.
Well, it starts with the leader. Everything, you cannot give what you don't have. So it really does start with you as a leader, being introspective and recognizing the hiccups or the potential obstacles that you can create for yourself and for other people.
Okay.
So, for example, I had a season in the business where I was just going through a challenging season. The business, things were slow, uncertainty here, there, and everywhere. And as far as I was concerned, I was doing a very good job of hiding my fears and my concerns from my staff. And I thought I was doing a great job about it. I then had a meeting with one of them much later after we got over the hump, where she expressed her concerns, the concerns that she and the other members of staff had, because they were like, Toks, you've just changed and you've been so cold. And I was like, me? You know?
Oh, dear.
Yeah, I was really shocked. But and it was an uncomfortable conversation because when you're a leader, and especially if you run a successful business, you get used to being celebrated for what people identify as success.
Yeah.
And you get used to people coming to you for advice and, really celebrating you and hailing you and all of that. And so to have somebody say the very opposite of that was a bit jarring for me.
You're just taken aback.
I was taken aback, but I'm quite introspective.
Okay.
And I know that my emotions come into play sometimes and want to interrupt a learning process. And when that happens, I just first thing I need to do is bite my tongue. Just let them speak and listen. And the second thing is, don't let your emotions inform you of whether what they're saying is true or not, because your emotions are transient. They have an agenda of their own, and the agenda of my emotion is to make me feel good and feel safe.
Yeah.
Its job is not to tell me the truth. And when I get into places of discomfort, chances are my default action is how can I get out of the discomfort, as opposed to how can I learn the lesson or take on what they're saying. So I listened and apologized because I knew that it was true. But what surprised me was the fact that my vibe sipped out into the workspace.
Yeah.
I didn't expect that was happening at all. And on hindsight, so I go back and look back and think and reflect, and I realized that the entire time my attitude was one that stank. And my attitude was, well, you're getting paid at the end of the month, so what's your problem?
Oh.
My attitude was, just get your job done. You get paid. I go to bed and I worry myself to sleep. You don't have to do that. And that was wrong because, one, I was making the workplace difficult because I was giving off fumes of discomfort and fear and uncertainty, and they were picking it up whether I liked it or not. Even though my words were okay, my attitude was giving off signs of that I wasn't okay.
Would you say it's a type of transferred aggression to
them? Yeah, 100%. Definitely. Well, that's such a great phrase to use. It was. It without doubt, that's what it was. So on the back of that, one of the really important traits that a leader should have is introspection. It's the power and the ability to look within yourself and fearlessly confront what you see that's unpleasant. Because we only want to see things that are good and make us feel great. And we don't want to recognize the flaws that we have in ourselves. And then that takes humility, because you've got to be... It does. And humility, contrary to what we were taught growing up, it's not a nice, sweet, pretty attitude that one has. Humility looks like battles within yourself, privately struggling, two versions of you struggling, the part that wants to be pure and good, and the part that wants you to be comfortable at the expense of anybody else.
From all you've said, I'm thinking that we should actually have another segment where we do just focus on leadership, because I think it's something that a lot of people who are in that position don't fully understand or are not properly equipped to handle, because what you just described, what happened with your staff, I think happens in a lot of workplaces, and it would take someone who's a good leader and has the right leadership skills to actually identify what you were able to identify. A lot of people wouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some people who their staff won't even be comfortable enough to
come
convey
that's right.
that message to them. You know, so maybe another
another session.
you know, but
Another
you know,
session.
still looking at leadership,
Yes.
right? How can a leader effectively support, or no, let me take another question. In what way can leadership skills contribute to building tenacity and resilience positively within an organization?
That's another one. Okay. Okay, in what way? So again, so one of the skills so I mentioned being introspective and being humble, but being authentic is another skill.
Oh, yeah.
So authenticity is, for me, that's the bedrock on which I try to grow from. And it's not to say I wouldn't call myself an authentic person. I would say rather that I strive to be authentic, and I think we should all strive to be authentic. So for you to be a leader, you've got to have people that are following you. And authenticity is the stripping away of the embellishments that we have allowed to cover our soul so that we will appear a better version of who we think we are.
And hide our imperfections.
Exactly. So when you choose to live authentically, you remove those appendages that have grown on you.
Yeah.
And once those are removed, the true version of you is exposed so that your team can recognize you and they can feel comfortable coming to you, because then you're not Jekyll one day and Hyde the next day. You know, they know you for who you are, and they can be comfortable and trusting when it comes to following your leadership or coming to you for advice or what have you. There's an interesting campaign that was run by Dove, the beauty brand, quite a few years ago, which has stayed with me. And what they did was they got a group of women, can't remember, let's say 6 women, into a room, let them sit for 2 to 3 hours and just chat, just get to know themselves. And I think they paired them up, so they sat down and they're chatting like you and I are talking, looking at each other. And then after a while, they began to call them out one at a time. And they had artists, they had a screen separating them from the artist. So the artist is on the other side with his easel and canvas, and his paintbrush and his pencil to sketch. And he says, "Describe yourself to me." And they describe themselves and he draws them. And then he says, "Describe the woman you chatted with." And then they had names. And she would describe Sarah. "Oh, Sarah's beautiful. Her eyes light up when she talks. And she's got this little dimple that's so cute." And she does all the description. Well, when they were done, they compared the 2 versions of the same woman. So Sarah describing herself and the other woman describing Sarah. And every single picture or portrait of the self-description was uglier than the other one.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. There was exaggerated flaws on faces. Oh, I've got this really big mole that covers half my face. But then the other person describes that she's got this cute mole that's just above her nose.
Goodness.
And what that showed was that our mental self-portrait oftentimes is negative.
Yeah, very.
And if you don't practice introspection, you're not going to see the positives in your own life, and you wouldn't have anything to give out. And then being authentic also allows you to accept the compliments of other people. And these are all of these traits and all of what I've described create an ecosystem within which your staff can function in when you're a leader. So it's not just about knowing how to manage projects and knowing how to delegate and being assertive, and because that's what leaders, especially when you have TV programs like The Office and all these other TV programs, you find that who they call leaders are actually bossy people.
Exactly.
And so the boss is like, "Well, I don't care, just get it done." And, a leader needs to have the the patience to look into their team and recognize their uniqueness and their unique gifts, and then inspire them to use their unique gifts.
Exactly.
So it's no longer just a case of, well, do it the way I said you must do it. But it's like, how would you do it? How can this result, so I had to learn as well.
You saying that, I noticed something. You notice how whenever maybe we're in a group picture or anything, we pick the picture, the first thing we're looking out is ourselves.
Yep.
We're searching, do I like this picture? And you liking that picture depends on what you perceive that you look good at or you don't look good.
Exactly. And that could be very different to what is always different actually to what other people see.
Yeah. So if this picture, if you pick this picture, I don't think it looks good, it's usually because you're not satisfied with the way you look.
Exactly. But why do you think we do that though?
I think I would say that society has measured what perfection looks like, giving us a standard of what perfect is. Right. And we'll never be satisfied because nobody's ever perfect.
Nope. And the standard always changes.
Yeah, standard always changes. Yeah. I mean, remember there was a time where when you wear a lot of colors, they would say it's a color riot.
Yes.
And then now they call it color blocking.
Exactly.
No, exactly. I mean, it's changing. I think you said once that, there was a time where it was the voluptuous.
Yes, exactly.
Then it went to the skinny.
And then now BBLs.
BBLs all over the place. It's crazy.
It is.
It's crazy. So I guess maybe that's why. So, but like you said, we need to internalize, we need to retrospect a lot. Right. And a leader needs to do that. And my goodness, back again to why I say we could have another session. On leadership.
We definitely should.
All right. So, couple of questions I have before we wrap things up today. In your opinion, what are key mindset shifts that Nigerians have to make to thrive in business, especially given the climb we have here? Yeah. Business climb we have here in Nigeria.
One of them is a lot of the shifts we need to make them because they're rooted in culture.
Okay.
So an example, which funny enough I gave recently at another interview, is that when I started, before I opened my boutique, I had a stint at a gift store and I was working with other business owners. Yeah. And I found myself in the middle of a conversation where I was the Nigerian, the one black person there, and the others were white English people. And this guy asked me the first question, how is business? And I said, oh, it's fine. And I said it without thinking, without any consideration. I didn't need to think, I wonder how business, I just said it's fine. That was my by rote answer. And then the next person was asked the same question, and she goes, oh, it's horrible. It's just been really, really bad. It's been challenging. And the conversation carried out, but what do you think we can do better? And suggestions were flooding in on how she can make a difference. The next question goes to the third person, how's business for you? Oh, it's been really bad. So I had to ask myself, why did I say it was fine? Because it wasn't fine for me. It was just as bad as the other women were saying it was for them. And the only answer I came up with was my culture, because in our culture, we do not brag about our misfortunes. We don't go around telling anybody that things are not fine. As a matter of fact, when we're sick, they say, I am strong, When I get a text from someone and she goes, I'm a bit strong today, so pray for me. That means that.
That means I'm under the weather.
That means I'm under the weather. I'm not well, and there is this fear of us pronouncing misfortune and therefore solidifying it. And so a lot of our cultural ways are not designed to help small businesses thrive today in this, and especially in this climate. So one of the things we need to look at is being teachable. I find that because we are very dynamic people, because we are so sure of ourselves, much of the definition of a Nigerian is coming from other Africans or other people. I remember some guy was telling me, I met at a networking event, that he was speaking to, I can't remember who it was he was speaking to. It was a well-known celebrity, and I can't remember who it was. And the person said, tell me about Nigeria. And he goes, I can't. This is a Nigerian man. He goes, I can't describe Nigeria to you, and I can't describe Nigerian people. You have to experience us. And the first thing to do is come to a Nigerian party. And this guy goes to a Nigerian party and goes, I get it now. I see why you couldn't, because you are so dynamic and you're so different and you're so confident. And so we have all of these traits within us, and they are beneficial because they help us remain resilient during challenging seasons. However, we also have to allow room for a little bit of humility and a little bit of being teachable. Being teachable means that our way is not always the best way.
Yeah.
You know, being teachable also means that, you know, other countries who we may possibly look down on or not really regard as worth our time may have better ways of doing things. So that's some of the things that as Nigerians we need to do, is become, I think, more open to possibilities outside of our own.
Yeah.
I also feel that we need to reduce the amount of bad PR that we are putting out there.
Oh, yeah.
Because it stops and frightens investors. So yes, there are many things that are not going well in the country, but there is a lot that's going well. I was just speaking to Kehinde earlier on and just talking about how good PR is what it helps to make other countries thrive. We don't have any good PR.
Yeah.
You know, we never talk positively about our country. We might speak well about us as a people, but we moan about the challenges of doing business in Nigeria. And when we do
we're
that,
loud usually,
loud.
Unfortunately.
And we are loud. And when we do that, we're also reducing possibilities of doing businesses with other countries because we're frightening them. So that's something else I think that we can do.
Yeah, and when I say, unfortunately, when I say we're loud, is that we're loud about our vices.
We're loud about everything.
Yeah, we're loud about our vices.
Yes.
I mean, where kidnapping started, we started talking about it.
Right.
Every time. And then you see, the funny thing is, usually when you start reading about maybe kidnapping and, there's a Google search, you see that there's kidnapping going in other countries.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
you probably don't know about it
Right.
because they're not making so much noise about it.
Exactly.
But there's so much noise about it that it looks like that's the only thing going on in Nigeria.
Absolutely.
So yes, I
Yeah.
think there are these vices. I mean, I don't think there's any country that doesn't have one vice or the other. But we need to be louder about the good.
We need to be louder about the good. I was saying to him again about how teachers have reported in schools in the UK children eating cardboard because they can't afford food in their home. There's poverty there. But you don't hear about that.
Yeah.
There's a teacher talked about children bringing empty lunch boxes to school.
Oh dear.
And pretending to eat from it so that they don't stick out amongst when other kids are eating because they can't afford it. So there are...
And that's in the UK? Wow.
In the United States, they have homeless cities. They have tents where people are like... so there is vices, like you said, everywhere in the world. But when we speak so much about ours, we start to give the impression that that's all there is about our
there's
country,
nothing good coming
and
out
that there's
of
nothing
here.
good, and that is so far from the truth.
True.
And Nigerians are doing amazing things around the world. Nigerians are doing great things here. Yesterday, I met a really sweet young lady who makes reusable sanitary pads, and she has a mindset of sustainability, and she's thinking about the next generation and thinking about how we can improve. And that is not... it's not necessarily a business that is highly profitable, but she's very socially conscious. She's environmentally conscious, and there are many people like her around. So we do need to shout more about our wins. And
what you're saying just reminds me of something. I think I was somewhere and someone was giving a talk, and he was like, the different countries are known for different things, and that when he's talking about things, he's not talking about their vices, what they promote as their
strengths.
Their strengths. And he said, for example, he gave an example. He said, America, one of the first things you think about is freedom of speech, freedom of this, freedom of that. There is that freedom. So every time you think of America, you think freedom.
Right.
When you think of a place like, say, China, you think of science and tech because they're pushing, in that. Then he asked, Nigeria.
What are we
When you think of Nigeria, what do you think of? There was silence. He was an American. Wow. He was giving a speech. He was an American. He said, when you think of Nigeria, what do you think? There was silence everywhere, all over the hall.
Wow.
Then he now gave us the answer. And when he gave the answer, I sat down and thought about it. I was like, actually, it's true. He said, when I think of Nigeria, from what I've experienced in Nigeria and Nigerians, when I think of Nigeria, I think entrepreneurship.
Wow, very true.
And I sat and I thought about it. I was like, actually, there is nobody. In fact, you can meet 10 Nigerians and they have something that they're
Everyone
doing.
does.
Everybody has some entrepreneurial gig that they're doing, regardless of how small it is.
And they're working full time in the corporate world, but they're always doing something.
Exactly.
They're thinking. I love that about Nigerians. And there is also the whole, everyone's going somewhere. The pepper seller on the street is going somewhere. If you speak to her, because I love speaking to people and I love to get into their minds and just try to see life from their perspective. And everyone is heading somewhere. I've not met anybody that, hey, how you doing? What are your plans? What are you doing? And they're like, well, I'm just happy. I'm in my job. You will find that in the UK, but you won't find that here. Everyone's like, well, what I plan on doing is this. And whether they're even
there's
planning
a future plan. Yeah.
There's a plan.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very true. And speaking of entrepreneurship, I have one last question.
Sure.
What advice would you give someone who's looking to pursue their entrepreneurial dream? I mean, it's one thing to have the dream. It's another thing to be equipped, for the process. Because some people think that being an entrepreneur is a road to riches. But it's a lot of hard work. And they don't tell people about that. So what advice would you give to anyone listening or watching right now that, it has a dream to become an entrepreneur?
I would say look within yourself and let your inspiration and your desire and your drive come from the core of who you are. So what that means is your idea for becoming an entrepreneur should not be inspired by somebody else's dream. It shouldn't be inspired by I will show them, like somebody did me wrong and I'm going to show them, inspired by regret or revenge. Your dream should grow from within you and not without you, because you will definitely face obstacles and bumps along the way that you're going to feel like, what's the point? And the only thread that will continue to be, that you can continue to hold, or the only thread that's going to run through from start to finish, is one that is rooted within you. Everything else will be very easy for you to give up on. But make sure that you are looking within yourself and your inspiration is coming from who you are. And then regularly go back to check within yourself. I mean, I have so many bits of advice for startup entrepreneurs. Being self-inspired or self-motivated rather is important. Having the right people in your space is incredibly important. And by doing that, you not only choose to get yourself into a network of strong people who are also entrepreneurs and who share the same values as you, but you also want to make sure that you are rooting out people in your space who are damaging to you. Sometimes that's family. Sometimes you might have family members or even close friends who are either negative, or they don't share your dream, or they don't see your own strengths. Stay around people who see your strengths and remind you of it. Because like we said earlier in the Dove campaign example, mentally we create caricatures of ourselves as opposed to beautiful portraits. And so make sure that you are around people who recognize your strengths and your beauty and everything good about you, and regularly tell you about it. That's rare, but when you find such people, hold on to them.
Okay, when you find such people, hold on to them. It is very, very interesting. It's been very, very interesting chit-chatting with you here this beautiful day. I feel like we can go on and on and on.
We definitely can.
But I think the most important thing that anyone should take away from today is the fact that anywhere you go, any journey you're on, it starts with you. It starts with you. You have to do the work. Even if you're a leader of people, you have to learn to lead yourself first, for you to be able to effectively lead them. We're using the word lead, not boss them.
Not command them.
Not command them. Lead them.
Yes,
Very, very key. And I think to a certain degree, Nigerians already have that resilient, tenacious ability. But what we're talking about now is converting that to something positive, something that yields results. So it's not. So there's a difference between being tenacious and resilient and long-suffering.
I love that you bring that up, actually.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of us, tend to think that I'm resilient. Actually what you're doing is long-suffering.
Right. And there might not be any fruitfulness at the end of it.
Yes.
Like nothing might come out of it.
Yes.
You might just, and that's another thing I feel like we do as well, is we want badges for our suffering. We want to be recognized and celebrated. Like, look at everything she went through. But yeah, no, we certainly need to intentionally practice resilience. And it is only through allowing yourself to go through the journey of entrepreneurship and accepting what comes your way, and also resolving to continue regardless of the opportunities to quit. It is only through going through that journey that you get past the obstacles. Like, there's no other way around it. Sometimes I say to myself, Toks, this is the way. This is it. This is the way. When I find myself in spaces where I'm looking at obstacles, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. I'm like, well, but this is the only way. There is the only alternative is to quit or go do something else. And I want to tell have I got time for one quick story? When I schooled in Kaduna, I went to Command Secondary School, Kaduna, in Kakuri, which was a military boarding school. And at the end of my first term, my mom came to see me in school, and she said to me, hey, how is school? How are you finding it? I began lamenting the wicked seniors, the soldiers, the early morning drills and road works and this, that, and the horrible food and all of that. And she said to me, so what do you want to do? And by then my family had moved to Lagos from Benin, and I said, I want to go to Lagos. I want to go to Command Lagos, so I'll be close to home. And she said, but you see, the thing is, even if you do move to Lagos, you're going to face the same seniors, you're going to face the same drills and the same roadwork and the same food. It's just that it's in a different location. Yeah. So why don't you deal with the devil than start learning afresh from somewhere else? And that piece of advice is probably my most repeated advice, because it has helped me to continue. When I've faced times in business where I've been like, I need to quit, I can't carry on, I think, well, if I quit and start something else, I'm going to face the same troubles. So the issue is that it's not the circumstances that cause the pain, it's our perspective about it. And learning to have a new perspective where business is concerned is incredibly helpful.
Okay. All right. Well, that's all we can take right now. Thank you so much, Toks, for making time out to be here.
I had a great time.
Yes, but we still need to discuss about that leadership session.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, that's all we can take. Thank you so much. And thank you for being patient with us and being with us. I've been talking with Toks Aruoture, and she's been our guest today, and she's promised that she's going to come back in here. So I'm looking forward to that. My name is Faith Onyebujo, and I've been your host. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. See you later.